Brother, are you all right?
No, I am not all right. I just shared a bottle of Kanar with Damar. That rhymes.
You're drunk.
Of course I'm drunk.
So what I hear you saying is we should see just what material does and doesn't get through the YouTube filter, just so we know what fucked up topics we can and can't talk about going forward.
Yes. That sounds good to me.
I'm for it.
You know, if I had the time off to where we could take a day and dedicate like 10 hours of 15 to 30-minute streams just testing what material gets flagged or how quickly it gets flagged, you know, that could be an interesting thing to do. But
What?
there's a lot of material that I already know off the bat. Nope, can't do that. Nope, can't do that. And it's all because we've tried it. I mean, hell, we were talking over the visual representations from Halo and comparing it to Star Trek Discovery, and CBS tried to copyright claim the entire fucking thing.
To no one's great surprise, because CBS are a bunch of... Let's just not go there, but yeah, they are. We all know they are. And they know they are. Arseholes.
They're the special case, and in not the good way.
Yeah.
No, this is Jared. If you ever go in to talk to anybody at CBS, just keep this in mind.
Are you talking to retard?
Well, of course I will be, because I'll be at the headquarters of CBS. Who else would I be talking to there?
Oh, save me, Jeebus!
You know, if Jeebus really was a thing, they must have one hell of a fucked up sense of humor. I mean, just look at humanity as a whole. That's gotta be the biggest joke on the planet. But before we go down just how weak and feeble and worthless the flesh is, what was it that you wanted to talk about this week, Leon?
Pretty much technology in regards to sci-fi and the different franchises, etc. And when the technology actually fits in, when it's something that's appropriate for the setting and context, or where it's something that's just, well, a fucking McGuffin or Deus Ex Machina all the time. Because let's face it, we have quite a fair bit of different sci-fi franchises, as it is right now, and they treat technology vastly different.
Yeah, you can almost say that you can run the entire gambit of how important or not important the technology is to the universe that's being created by the original progenitor of the franchise. And some of them even go back and forth with it throughout the span of a single series. Yes, I'm looking at you, Asimov.
Hey, Purple.
Let's start though with an example that we're all quite intimately aware of. Star Trek. Star Trek has a lot of just MacGuffins. The fucking shield in of itself is a fucking Deus Ex Machina.
The shield, the deflector array, the main deflector dish, the transporter, the warp core, the warp drive in general, medical technology. Yeah, we could just pretty much list everything in some way, shape, or form has been used and overused, despite how they had previously set it up in canon.
Yeah,
Wait a minute, Dora. I thought Dora was pro Foundation. Or were you just Foundation agnostic?
Don't invite Steve. We don't need a 5-hour lecture on that now.
Too bad, you're gonna get it.
No, interested in the TV series, not so much the book. Okay. Well, hopefully you are as pleasantly surprised and enjoyed as much as some of us on the panel have.
And then there are those of us that haven't watched it.
You're missing out, man. You're missing out.
Apple, that's all I have to say.
You don't have to watch it, in that way. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge, wink, wink.
It's almost like technology is a thing even today.
Agreed, however.
I just admitted it. It's a little bit of laziness and a little bit of other priorities.
Yes. Such as the priority I'm getting ready to share on the screen here in a second.
It's
Without
priority not to watch anything made by Apple.
True. And while you're setting that up, let me just say, Davros, try to look in the mirror without the prism between you and the mirror.
that's not possible.
I mean, I know some people like the kaleidoscope effect that you can get by doing that, but it can backfire on you.
One of
So
my
with
favorite
this-
from Star Wars right here.
Oh, the energy bridge.
I will say, though, that Star Wars, in a lot of cases, I would say they get a pass. Because they don't try to make their technology work for something it's not intended to work as, and then try to explain it away as a mission critical or episode critical plot point. Except for in the last 3 movies, which shall not be mentioned.
Well, last 3 movies I know were the prequel series.
I know.
Oh, and Rogue One.
Aside from that aspect, what's the whole history and story around the Kyber crystal?
Well,
Which
depends.
one of them?
Are we talking about Legends or canon?
Yes, and that is exactly the point. So, Star Wars is not necessarily immune from this one, because granted, it doesn't happen as often as other franchises. I will give them that. That, in totality, Star Wars has avoided the technology MacGuffins as much as they could, but they've still stepped in it in other ways.
But then you have things that, like, the whole thing with the kyber crystals as it is right now stems from the whole thing with we want to try to bring this into just one universe. With old legend stuff, that wasn't really an issue. The way it was before, it hasn't ever really been an issue. As in something like, say, the lightsabers, the technology in and of itself is somewhat mundane. It's the way that you put it together, it's the way that you use it. That's what makes it somewhat special. It's kind of like trying to be the first person to mix nitroglycerin and not knowing that you can't shake it. If you don't know what you're doing, well, you might be the first person alive to discover it, but you're not going to be the first person alive for a long time.
Unless you get exceptionally lucky. And see, purple rhymes with orange. Great to see you. And you do have a point there. It's easy to avoid the techno fixes when they can claim parts of it are magic.
And that really comes to the point of where do we see things being described as magic in the different franchises? Say something like, say Star Trek versus Star Wars. In Star Wars, you could say, yeah, it's magic, it just works. But at the same time, the technology in Star Wars has been around for, well, tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of years, at the point of the story we're in right now. It's just been around for so long that it's mundane to them. So many of these things are just things that it just works. If it takes something like, say, Star Trek instead, though, you have a lot of it where we have somewhat predefined parameters for this is how it works, this is what it does. These are the things that, yeah, it's a common issue there, purple runs with orange, but we have all these things where, say, the transporters, it transports matter. It essentially stores an image of the person it transports, and that pops up in the other location. Just to simplify it a lot. But then you have the shit where, okay, we can use this transport to cure someone from a disorder that's aged them. We can use the transports to remove these things. We can use the transports to save people that have been kind of lost in the buffer, etc., etc., etc. Where some of it works, like the thing with Scotty in, was it TNG episode something?
Relics.
Yes. Where the thing with him and essentially having a buffer that just repeats itself, that works. In the universe, that works. Something like trying to save someone from, aging too fucking fast. I do not see the way that that would work in the way that they've set up the transporters. It becomes a really convenient plot point just because, oh shit, we have 10 minutes left. We have to find a way to actually solve this. Rather than this is something that is accurate to the in-universe explanation of it.
Wait, you mean a recent iteration of Trek is gone with lazy shit writing to try to come up with a conclusion to a story? Say it ain't so.
Yeah, they might have.
That's no way to talk about Enterprise, the last series on Star Trek.
That's just the last episode, though. But it's been a long time.
I'm not gonna do it. I am not gonna do it.
You can look at shit that in, say, Babylon 5. The way that they have the technology there, it's something that's pretty much everyday, a lot of it to them. It's not something special to them. It is to them like a telephone is to us today, despite them being on a giant fucking space station. If you look at, say, Stargate, they started off with, we don't know diddly dick about how any of this works. And they, at the end of SG1, are at a point of, we know kind of how to start this shit, how to actually work it, and to do the very basic troubleshooting based on what we can see and find. You can see these different things in the universe which they make sense in the universe. In Stargate, you have a lot of things that they don't really seem to make a lot of sense if you try to put them into other contexts, but they don't put them into the other contexts. The whole ring transporter thing, they haven't really broken the rules of the rings. With the Stargates, they do the damnedest not to break the rules of Stargates.
I mean, the rings are like the seashells. They're there, they work, but they're so not thought of that they don't need to go into it. And let's be honest, you can get a lot of leeway when you destroy one star and all of a sudden people think you can do anything.
No, but this is actually something that Stargate has this to its advantage too. It's new technology to us. It's something completely new. We haven't been around it for hundreds of years, thousands of years. We need to actually find out what the shit this does. And even though we might think that we knows what's going on there, that doesn't really mean anything. If it's something like Star Trek, their technology has evolved alongside with them. But all the fucking time, you hear shit like, oh yes, we've now maxed out the efficiency again of this thing. Oh no, we've managed to do this thing with this other thing that meant that this doohickey here is completely fucking obsolete now. They are doing things on, say, how it's called, on the Enterprise. They were doing shit that you wouldn't really expect from, the flagship of the Federation and just some bored engineers.
Yeah. Looking at the chat, Sean Carroll does bring up a good point. Speaking to SG1, that show does show one thing humanity actually has been exceptionally good at: reverse engineering things. Think about how many nations have gotten a hold of an example of something another nation has developed and then was able to figure out how it worked and then made their own iterations and their own progression from that. Didn't say they always did it better, but they made an iteration of it.
I have a picture for you, Jared.
Why does that not surprise me?
Well, reasons. Just speaking of,
And Rodent has a good point there. And the whole reverse engineering and understanding of things, that was what started off the whole Robotech and Macross series.
yeah, and the whole thing with whole mixing and merging different technologies. Yeah, no. That's always going to be a major issue unless those technologies were made to be compatible to begin with. Which this is actually something, I don't know if you've noticed this, but so often in sci-fi right now, for some reason, it's made out that we can actually understand what's going on. It's made out that it's not something that's completely alien to us. Even something like a meeting with Rama, which all of you should know about, should, they still had issues actually understanding what was going on there. They could start understanding some of the base concepts, but it wasn't until well, let's say, was it Rendezvous with Rama though? It might have been Rendezvous with Rama, the first book there, where they started actually getting into contact with the first Rama. And they were, well, mostly confused about what was going on there. They didn't know what was going on for the simple reason that everything was just alien to them. It wasn't until the second book when they started getting some kind of response from it, and when they start realizing that, okay, we can actually do more shit here. There are certain computer terminals, but we don't know what they do. There are certain things happening here, but we have no idea how they happen or why they happen. And I think that that would actually be more and more, at least if someone was trying to be uh, beneficent, well, would. If they were trying to work with us and trying to benefit us, that's the closest thing that we'd actually get to find alien technology that we could interact with. As opposed to, oh, big green button. Green means good.
Except in the cultures where it doesn't. Well, and that is actually one of the things that Stargate Atlantis actually touched on, and actually has stayed pretty consistent with for the bulk of the beginning of the run, in that while the team from Earth had enough of an understanding of the ancient language, they were baffled by Wraith. And even McKay, for all of his McGuffin-y goodness at what he would do each episode, which in Stargate fashion was even called out in a fourth wall breaking manner a few times, he would just barely be able to figure it out. To where you could probably say he didn't actually figure it out, he got lucky as fuck.
Well, not if you ask him. If you ask him, it was all skill.
Oh, of course. It's all skill, and I'm just that good.
Are you talking about MacGyver?
MacGyver...
No, that was the previous series.
Yes, that was the previous series. We're talking about MacGyver 2.0, otherwise known as Rodney McKay.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I had a dog made a mess, and I had to go clean it up.
Yeah, but I would actually want to know, well, other than Brahma, what are the sci-fi series where technology is the most consistent? As in, it's stated that this has this purpose, and that's its fucking purpose. It's not like you can just reverse engineer an oven into becoming, say, a radio transmitter, just like that without any tools.
If you're going for consistency of application, and even progress and whatnot, I would have to point to the Dune franchise. Because the technology that's mentioned there, and the few bits of it that are actually explained basically how they're supposed to work in universe, you don't get much, if any, deviations from it.
I feel like in Dune's case, though, they might have a bit of a what's called advantage that the other ones don't have. Frank Herbert and him actually having a clear vision for everything going on. He knew what he was talking about. He didn't just half-ass shit.
Yeah, there's a reason why the novels that his son and the ghostwriter put together to finish out the original run, but also do the House trilogy and the historical trilogy before that took place before that, it was all based off of Frank's notes. He had the entire history of that segment of humanity mapped out. He had the basic points and your major points throughout the entire history of that civilization roughed out enough that he had the origination of each of your major political players. You had the development of certain major technologies that would be life-changing in that universe, which, when you look at it, they were. So you had that cohesive, singular knowledge base to build the universe from. When you get into something like Star Trek and Star Wars, for two examples, once you have more writers, especially writers that are working on different installments at the same time, that's where you're going to have the congruency issues, the continuity issues. From the chat, Rodent and Sean Carroll both point to The Expanse as being very consistent internally. Also, Firefly and Battlestar Galactica. I would even throw in Babylon 5. And what do all of these have in common? A singular, common source for the actual universe building and storytelling that they're starting from. It's easier to control and have that consistency when you have that level of management over the actual universe building that you're doing.
Mind you, as a side effect of that, though, these are more grounded than so many of the other ones. Oh, except there is a good reason for not using las guns in the desert there, Rodent. Las guns are notoriously iffy to actually use. And for something like the Fremen, who live in the desert and don't really have access to, well, always be able to clean it, yeah, that's going to be an issue.
You also have the energy requirement. You still have to recharge the cells for the las gun. For the portable ones, the handheld ones. And energy signatures are actually very easy to trace. So them using something as quote-unquote archaic as a Mala pistol makes a lot of sense in universe for the situation they're in. You want to take someone out quickly and relatively quietly, use a Mala pistol, use a splinter gun, and use a knife. And if you can do that while moving so effortlessly and quietly on sand to not attract Shai-Hulud, sneaking up on another human is child's play.
Yeah, mind you, you could probably, I would say just probably with this, do something like have a, say, well, black powder guns or smokeless powder guns in the Dune universe. But with that comes a major, major, major issue. Logistics. If you have something like Muller pistol, you could essentially just make those, or make the darts in one place. If you want to have something like, say, black powder guns or just smokeless powder guns, you're going to need a whole new plant just in order to make the ammunition, make the casings, make the primers, make the bullets themselves. And that is just if they're actually, the kind of ammunition we see as modern day here, with brass casings, etc. It could even be something like you have the cartridgeless casings. But it's still going to be something where you need a lot more just to ship that around. And in a universe such as Dune, where shields work pretty much everywhere except for on Dune or on Arrakis, that's not really going to be worth it. It's not worth having or going through all that effort for something that just works in one singular place. And that is if it can actually see what the fuck you're shooting at in the first place.
Yeah, that actually was one of the things that the newest movie got right, was those storms were nothing to fuck with.
like Coriolis storms. Is it 600 or 700 kilometers an hour? It shears the fucking flesh off your skin, or the flesh off your bones, and then just sharpens down your bones or hones down your bones.
Mm-hmm.
They ain't giving no flying fucks.
Yeah, now, Rodent does point out something that the Fremen did have a manufacturing capability, but manufacturing a powder propellant type of ammunition versus an energy cell for a laser weapon are disparagingly different, and the Fremen were about secrecy, and mainly, we don't want outsiders to know what we're doing, what we have going on. We want the outsiders to leave us the fuck alone. So having a major energy production facility, or even a couple smaller ones to keep these las weapons, the power cells, charged, not exactly easy to hide, let alone keep protected from Shai-Hulud.
Also, things like the still suits, etc., aren't exactly, how to put it, they are not per se hard to make, depending on, well, the still suit itself. The Fremen themselves make best still suits, of course, but you also see the way that they use the rest products from the spies, etc., in order to manufacture equipment. So much of what they did and what they used was also shit that they were, well, essentially stealing or scavenging off the Harkonnen. If you can get ready-made parts for a lot of it, it makes it a lot easier just to use what you need or take what you need, and then leave the rest of the shit behind. Especially since the Harkonnen believe there's maybe just a couple of thousand on your planet.
Not millions.
Yeah.
Yep.
And a couple thousand was actually an average number for most of your single sieges, and there were many sieges.
Yeah.
And speaking of you wished, now I remember why I hated all the Dune movies except McLaughlin's turn as Paul.
Cal McLachlan was a good Paul Atreides, except for his age. Even with his age, though, I would wager that if we could use the shit we have today, he could have been made into the perfect Paul Atreides.
This is why I say blend the 1984 movie with the 2021 movie, and you would have an as close to perfect translation from page to screen as you could with that material. There were some sieges that were in the tens of thousands, and they did have more of the manufacturing, but that's where the majority of the still suits and those things were actually manufactured and came from. So you did have some of the trade amongst the Fremen between the sieges in that regard, and they had their own internal politics and whatnot there. So there was actually a lot of forethought in world building that went into that entire epic.
Now, with that, though, and just seeing the way that Dune was actually, well, put together, Why is it so hard for people today to seem to, I guess, emulate it? Or at least try to get to the point where they understand the way that Dune works? I've seen, I don't know how many discussions now about just Dune alone, and people not understanding the fucking shields. You can't just, well, slap and then force your way through a shield. It gets deflected. It's not something where it's not like a non-Newtonian fluid. We can just stick to it and then slowly push through. You have to go through slowly to begin with in order to actually pass through the shield.
Yeah, as soon as the energy level is just high enough, the shield pings it off. And I think a lot of the issues in those discussions, actually, it comes down to the comment that I made on Drinker's video about it. I wonder how many of the people that are providing analysis for the movie actually are as versed of the source material as they try to portray themselves to be. I have my doubts. It seems like a lot of the people who are your more vocal, actually doing shows dedicated to analysis and comparison, the majority of them, their exposure and experience with the Dune franchise is limited to the visual material, is limited to the 1984 movie and what they could get through of the miniseries. I have my doubts that a lot of them have read any of the books, let alone understood them.
I think the understanding part might actually be the, well, largest issue there. Because, let's face it, looking at a lot of them, they see the, they look at the movie, they might have read the book, but they don't actually understand the mechanics of it. It's like someone trying to describe a telephone or a modern smartphone to someone 40 years ago. And then that someone thinking that it's essentially a holographic projector that can a holographic projector that can do just outright magic shit no matter what you try to do with it, and it can hack itself into doors, it can do all these kinds of things. If you don't actually understand the way the phones work, it wouldn't be hard to actually understand, or it wouldn't be hard to see where people are coming from with it. That being said, go on.
It sounds like you're describing a sonic screwdriver.
Kinda, yeah. But it's one of those things where, if you think about the Holtzman field, or Holtzman generator, where is it used in Dune? It's used for so many fucking different things. From shields, to folding space, to keeping light bulbs up, to just all manners of things. And in actually doing that, or in actually having those kinds of uses, the Holtzman field is, well, it's essentially the same thing all the time, but it's applied in different manners.
And the way that I was able to understand and make sense of the Holtzman effect and the Holtzman field was really a manipulation of what we would see as the quantum field, as that ever-present layer of reality that is not exactly fully understood by physics or anything really. And that's where the genius of not necessarily T.O. Holtzman, but that's getting really into the lore, and we'll do that later, not this week. We could do a deep dive into the lore there. But you have that advanced level of understanding that no one else really had before or since in the universe, that has allowed a simple principle from his standpoint and been able to utilize it in so many different ways that it, to him, it's like a piece of textile, a piece of fabric that you can use for a multitude of different purposes, but ultimately at its core, it's a piece of fabric.
Or even something closer to that in the way it actually works. A transistor. It can be used for so many different things. But it's not just this one thing. It's not just this one thing all the time that this is the only use for it. Because looking at it in Dune, it is way more consistent with its use of the Holtzman fields or the Holtzman generators, etc., than Star Trek is with anything.
Now, there is one thing that is as consistent in Star Trek as really any technology in Dune. Just one. The warp core.
Is that really as consistent, though?
It is, because as we, even in TOS, it was a reaction element, a reaction chamber that generated the power for the ship that was crucial to faster than light travel. That's what the warp core has been the entire time. There have been MacGuffins around it and concerning its safety protocols and ejection system, but the warp core itself has been the most consistent technology utilized either as set dressing or story plot points in all of Star Trek.
Now, because thinking of the warp core, I'm just thinking about all the times they've been talking about, yes, we need warp energy here, or we need to do this with warp energy. And the way that they've essentially tried to mix and match the different systems in order to make it work as a plot point as it is.
I mean, you have that's where getting into the ancillary equipment is where those deviations come in, like the amount of warp plasma requested by the self-aware AI repair station in Enterprise.
I was wondering when that was going to come up.
Yeah, that was an interesting video. Not entirely wrong, but yeah. And Rodent does bring a point there. When the warp core itself is used as a story point in Star Trek, it's either because of damage to it, or just that, it's a ticking time bomb. Which is a pretty good allegory for the current day view of nuclear power and nuclear reactors by the general populace at the time those episodes were made. A lot of people didn't understand it.
A lot of people don't understand them now.
No argument from me on that one.
So just, in general, and this is something with sci-fi, just the different categories of it. I see there just being, well, 3 categories of sci-fi in the way that they actually use technology. You have it's the way we've always done shit, or it's old, which is, I'd say that's where Star Wars really falls into it.
The I don't give a fuck about technology mentality, it's there.
Yeah,
the It's just their grouping.
Or just technology has been refined to the point now where these things, these core principles, are to these people in that universe as a methane boiler is to us today. It's not really something that requires a whole lot of intellect just to understand. It's been refined over thousands of years to the point where this is how it works. You don't need to know more. All parts are essentially made in order to work with it. You can, to some degrees, mix and match, but not always. Then you have this is actually modern shit. We don't know everything about it, but we know enough to actually know how it works and use it daily. And I would say that includes things like, say, Battlestar Galactica, Babylon 5, The Expanse, Firefly. It's essentially we use it every day. We don't need to really understand it, but it's something that's there. It's something that's high tech.
You don't need to know how your microwave converts the 120 240 volt AC out of your wall plug through the magnetron to create the radiation to heat your food to know that, hey, I'm in a pinch, I want something warm to eat, hey, let me throw it in here for 30 seconds.
Pretty much, yeah. And then there's the third category with, hey, look at all this fancy schmancy technology. This is how it works. I'm going to shove it in your face all the time. This is all going to be all over the fucking place. Everyone's talking about technology. Which, sadly, Star Trek kind of falls under.
Oh, I would agree that Trek is very technology reliant in its storytelling and its application. And I put that on to one really big reason why. When you look at the point of view, the perspective of that universe that we're given in the vast majority of episodes, and on the aggregate, 98% of the material that has been put to screen has been from the eyes of someone that either is a member of Starfleet or is looking at the records and recordings of what happens aboard a ship being run by Starfleet. Starfleet has its requirements that even your most basic person on the ship, much like submarines, there are certain minimum knowledge requirements that you have to have. So them working that into the episodes doesn't really surprise me, given the personal and professional background of Gene Roddenberry and what he put into the show from the beginning. I'm not surprised by that. And sometimes it can be overdone. I mean, they are so reliant on the technology that the script writers are not the ones that come up with the terminology. They actually will start writing the dialogue and then put in brackets, insert technobabble here. And then hand it off to to that department that actually deals with the technology in Star Trek for them to put it into the script.
I'd say that's kind of where I see the issue with it. In that, how many episodes of Star Trek have you seen where technology is explained to someone who should be on the same level?
In short, far too many times. I would say that there's an average 5 episodes a season where that happens, where someone who is a senior level officer in Starfleet that should know these basics, but they still use it as exposition for the audience.
This is something where This is one of my favorite recurring moments rather, in Stargate SG-1. Just fix it. I don't care how you do
O'Neill.
it. Just fix it. I have no time for this fucking technobabble. That's your department, Sam. I do not need to know anything more.
There's one line that's even better. Daniel, maybe he read the report. Maybe he read the report. That really is one thing about Stargate SG-1 as a series. Things like that, they got so spot on with reality, and they were able to maintain it effectively throughout the entire run. You gotta give that creative team the props for being able to do that.
But in SG-1, the characters actually knew one another. It wasn't something where it's from episode to episode if they know one another or not. They'd been working together for so fucking long that they knew how these other characters would actually react in these situations. That being said, though, take something like Firefly. There have been moments in Firefly where certain components have been mentioned, where some shit has been mentioned. Say, for example, to Simon, because Simon's a bit of a fish out of water in this kind of context. But it's not something that's over the top. It's not something that's insulting to the viewer. It's just that. It's something that would be a natural part of the universe. It's something that this would actually happen if this was a real scenario. And that's why I feel like Firefly is actually one of those, well, category 2 ones. Simply because this works in the universe. Not everyone has to know about it. Not everyone has to have a, well, degree of knowledge in it. Some people do, but it just fucking works. I don't have to know how the microwave works. Therefore, I'm not going to care about it. Someone else can deal with it instead.
Like the wife. I don't care what is broken on the car. Just fix it.
Kinda, yes. But I feel like we get so many more of the category 3 sci-fi universe now, where everything has to be explained. Every single little detail. I don't fucking care. Show me it working. Show me that it works. And I won't really care as much about the how it works. Take the parts in Star Trek. They aren't really explained in the show, but we see them work. We see that they work. We can't see really how they work because it's a piece of cardboard in a, well, plastic cover, but still.
Don't forget the rocks hiding behind the screen.
Ah, yes, and the poor person having to put them in there all the time.
Yeah, Purple Rhymes with Orange says something that I have 2 words in response to that can show that mentality going awry. So he said, in writing, it is why most stories need a newcomer as a main character, so there is someone to ask questions about things that are common knowledge to everyone else. Wesley Crusher.
I think the main question is, why is he there?
Because the captain has the hots for his mom, who's a senior medical officer.
He should have been postnatally aborted. At whatever age he was when the fucking show started.
Well, and here's the thing. That goes to show. I understand the premise that Purple was going for. And for the most part, I agree with it. But it is a tough framework to get right. and have it come off as genuine. This is where I'll point to Firefly as one of those shows that was able to pull it off and do it right. Because you had Simon, who, brilliant medical doctor for what he was fucking retarded about how to live life outside of the central system.
Something, something intelligence, something, something smart.
Exactly. And because of that, and because the writing was actually competent around that mentality there, they pulled it off in Firefly. But when you have that opportunity of a young character that was meant for the younger audience to identify with at the time TNG was airing, Wesley knew too much for what was good for his character, and it bit him. It hurt the presentation of the dynamics of the crew as a result of it. That is just that right there. Two of my favorite shows attacking the same problem in different ways with different results.
Even then, looking at Firefly, what is one of the main things that Simon asks about the Firefly, or in the Firefly universe? What are the Reavers? One of the main reasons he did not know what the Reavers were was because they were essentially seen as a myth by many. Something that, well, it wasn't really even a thing. That's why the Reavers weren't always common knowledge everywhere. Some people knew about it. To others, it was just myth, legends.
They were campfire type stories in the Outer Ring where they would be an actual potential threat. But in amongst the core worlds, no. The Reavers didn't go that far, and unless you were trading and interacting with people on a regular basis from that the outskirts, why would you care?
Even then, even if you did care, someone says, okay, there's this band of, we call them Reavers. We think they're kind of people. They fly around in ships with corpses strapped to them. They are the most violent fucking things you have ever seen or heard of. They will eat you.
No. Let's get it right. They will rape you, they will kill you, and they will eat you. And if you're lucky, in that order.
Yeah. And how many people would really believe that? I mean, look at today and the things that we see, the things that people outright fucking confess to, the others don't fucking believe still. Where someone says outright, this is what I believe in, this is what I'll do. And people do not believe it when they've actually done it.
Yeah.
When they keep doing it.
Well, and this, both Purple and Mark Beiser have it right. If you've only ever been exposed to the Alliance and the Alliance approved media and news and messaging, you're never going to know. And that's exactly what Simon came from.
Yeah, and even if you were told, why would you put in, or why would you pay it in mind? Well, it's essentially like someone today hearing about Warhammer 40k and then finding out that, okay, these things are real.
Have you been talking to Von Helton?
No, thankfully.
Are you sure?
Well, so here is keeping with the in-universe aspects of this specific topic. I can see why the Alliance government would still actively cover it up and not want reports of the activity going out there. Because what was it that we weren't supposed to learn until seasons 3 or 4? but ended up learning in the movie Serenity. The reason why the Reavers are a thing is because of the Alliance.
They done fucked up
Yeah.
big time.
It's almost like, hey, I did something stupid. I don't want people to know about it, so I'm going to make sure nobody knows about it. Hide all the evidence except for one piece of evidence you can't get your hands on. And then have it come back to bite you in the ass 20, 30 years later. Sounds about right.
Yeah,
Although in case of Clinton, if Lewinsky had just gotten rid of the dress instead of taking it to get cleaned.
Oh, there are many things the Clintons have handled wrong.
Oops. No, but that's something where I would say the Firefly universe has handled their technology perfectly. Even in the fucking scene in the episode, or was it? Where they come across the Reaver, or their ship raided by the Reavers. And who is it? Is it Jane that tells him to wear the fucking suit or the spacesuit still?
Yeah, that was I forget the name of the episode, but it's the one where they found the one survivor, and Mal and what's her name? I can't remember the character's name now. The first officer. Neither one of them actually wanted to take the guy on board, but everyone else was essentially played pity party. They knew that something wasn't right because Reavers never leave survivors.
Okay, so first officer, I'm assuming was possibly Zoe Washburn.
Zoe, yes.
Okay, I've never watched it, but I believe it's still on Netflix.
I'm not sure because they removed it from many places here due to Josh Whedon stuff.
Yeah, let me take a look.
But yeah, in that episode, when they tell the doctor he can come over, but there's still no air there, and he still has to wear a fucking spray suit. And then when he's over there and sees everyone else actually being,
not in
normal,
their suits,
no space suits, and they tell him, "Oh yeah, you've got that wrong."
Yeah, he would have fucking died if he actually had come over like that and it was needed.
Yeah, but it also shows it's not just idiot-proof stuff. Even with the spacesuits there, even if it's something that seems to be somewhat simple for the others, it's something that the Doctor wasn't all aware of, or all aware of how to use.
Sorry if it sounds like I'm being aggressive with the keyboard. I'm not. I'm just doxing people.
Well, Mark asked a good question. If they don't leave survivors, then where do the stories come from? Escapees and third-hand accounts. Because let's look at that episode. Let's look at what happened to the guy. Would you call that guy a survivor? I would call him
physically.
I would call him a convert, because, as Zoe said, he was forced to watch, and as a result, he psychologically broke and started acting like them because that was his new way to survive, was to be like those that were right there as an imminent threat to him. You either fit in and join the crowd, or this is what's going to happen to you. And I agree with Mark. they took a risk. They took a risk because of the segment of the crew that didn't know better. Sometimes in a proper chain of command, it doesn't fucking matter what your feelings or your opinions are. I'm the captain, I'm the boss, this is what we're doing. Yes, the guy is alive, but he ain't no survivor. So, there's the airlock. Out you go.
Yeah. I still find it really interesting though, because the way that they showed it in that episode and showed everyone else in the episode too, you could see the other people there not even really being aware of what this man was. Well, maybe not what he was, but what he had turned into. They could not fathom that he would be so broken to the point of him being, well, essentially a monster at that point, or a reaver, as it were.
Yeah, Rodent, I would say that Mal learned from that episode in the series. But, well, and there's another thing with the application of technology in the storytelling overall. Let's look at Firefly. You have some very advanced technology between the interstellar FTL travel, but then you have them using smokeless powder firearms. And the
Was it really smokeless powder, though?
For the most part. If you look at it, it was early smokeless. It wasn't black powder, but it was like even the cordite today, it's not entirely smokeless. You still get puffs and see the expelled gases under a majority of conditions from a modern firearm. So it was at its best on par with what we have today. At its worst, it was Korea era. Maybe end of World War II type, where it was an improvement but not perfect. It wasn't like your Civil War era, where, or even shortly thereafter, when you still had just clouds of smoke being generated. But that's also the outlying systems, not the Alliance-controlled areas. In the Alliance-controlled areas, the only people with firearms are your police, your military, or don't see that the populace does, unless they're a collector that they tried to steal a laser gun from.
And even then, it's barely the collectors.
Yeah.
Since they aren't really allowed to make new guns. All the guns essentially there, except for the Alliance guns and misappropriated ones, or, well, they can't be, new guns, we all know that. All of the guns have come there from Earth. But from what I recall, there have been made different variations of the different guns to the point where they do not work the way that our guns work today.
No,
as in not just classical bullets.
Yeah,
cartridges.
Yeah, well, and that's what Roden was pointing out too. There are differences shown or hinted at and everything, but going back to before, Purple brings up the disparity in the application of the technology is really where I was going. Where when you look at the barely surviving terraforming efforts that give us the majority of the worlds that Mal and the crew of the Serenity end up at, where it is very 1800s Wild West North America type of setup and interactions for the majority of it, which would make sense for a place that just barely made it to human habitability on the terraforming. And then you're an afterthought on top of that because, well, you're not in the core world, you're not in the heart of the Alliance control, so why should we give you this more advanced technology? It's very similar to if you were to take modern day New York City, take it back in time to the 1700s, drop it into the middle of the Utah Territory, and they don't decide, and there is no trade between the two that are allowed. That's the type of disparity you end up with there.
Which they do not really break that within the series itself either. Take something like, say, Jamestown. That in
the
and of
mud
itself,
farm.
or something like that there, they don't use hyper advanced technology just in order to actually do shit. Sure, things have gotten better there since the hero named Jane came along and actually, gave them a lot of money out of his own free will. I think, maybe.
At least it works for them that way.
Yes. No, but with that, even with actually getting that kind of money, it still isn't actually. It isn't hyper advanced. It's very far from the core worlds, or core worlds. It's very far from even modern technology in many aspects. But even then, they have these small technological gadgets. They have the small things where they can afford it, where they have access to it. Like the holo table, or the holo pool table. And I find this to be one of those examples of technology handled right. Because we've seen so many examples now of, say, Star Trek Picard, where every fucking time something happens, it has to be explained. And they explain it wrong. The positronic brain thing. It's not just that, oh yeah, you can take one part of it and then recreate it. No, that's not how it works.
That is, because in TNG they established that a positron is the android equivalent of a neuron in an organic brain. Yeah, take a single neuron out of your brain and then try to recreate the entirety of your being from a single neuron.
Yeah, it's not really gonna happen. But that's the thing that they try to propose, or the thing that they try to push. Which I would say is why I'm more and more disliking Star Trek now, for the way that they're handling it.
Well, it's like, honestly, a simple fix in Picard for that would have just been to say that, oh, wait, no, we didn't salvage a neuron from Data. We used what he had tried to upload and overwrite on B4 as our template. Well, there you go. Because you have Data when he made the attempt to give B4 the entirety of his programming to date. There's your baseline. There's your starting point. So much fucking easier. But oh, wait. Then we're shoehorning ourselves into a particular segment of the timeline and the multiverse of Star Trek. And Well, while we say we're a part of that one, we're not gonna act like it.
That would make so much more sense. We can't have sense, can we?
But then we're limited on how certain characters are going to be, because then we remove our creative license. We can't just randomly change it to where a highly intelligent, highly cerebral person would all of a sudden put on a shitty fucking French accent.
That's no way to talk about John Stamos doing a cover of Le Poisson from Little Mermaid there, Jared.
I would rather listen to that than to Patrick Stewart as Picard doing that fucking French accent in just the worst outfit. That entire show was a fucking mess and a fucking train wreck. It was so goddamn predictable, it was insulting.
Speaking of all the predictability and all that stuff, though, and just technology and Trek in general, when the fuck do the translators know when to translate and when not to translate? Is clear gah, just gah? Or does it actually translate to something?
I think my thought is that there's a sensibility filter, which is why certain alien profanities are never translated into English that we hear. But then you also have the issue with proper names, which is actually established in TNG. Darmok and Jalad at Tanagra. Their language is so metaphoric, and it's all proper names. Oh, fucking Christ. You weren't joking.
No, I'm not. That is the thing. Apparently, they were going to ask Renee to reprise the role, but I think he passed away just before this happened. Before they did this.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, because he's the one who originally sang the song in the animated series, in the animated movie for.
Yeah, but the universal translators having a problem with proper names has been a consistent thing through Trek. The issue is the profanity. Like, patach is an insult that is tantamount to a number of words that I can't say on YouTube. But it's never translated.
Well, that would also mean that to the Klingons, you say something like fucker. It wouldn't translate that.
Well, it depends. Are they listening in through your own universal translator or their own? Because they might not have the sensibility filter on.
Even then, with that, if I say cunt, is it going to be something where it runs on Australian filter, or is it going to be American filter?
Oh, come on. You know it's going to be an Americanized Eurocentric filter. Don't even try to play that game. You know how bad the white... Wait a minute. I'm not supposed to give up the game, am I? I should be quiet now.
Well, with all that, I think that Enterprise handled it a lot better than the rest has done. For the simple reason that they don't always know how the fuck it works. If you have something like the Universal Translator, it needs to have actual rules for it. Which, when they have a phrase in French or in some other fucking Earth language, why isn't that translated? It's still an Earth language. it's still going to be something which it breaks against the language that's already been spoken. Or even if you have something, why is it that if someone's trying to spell socks, the translator doesn't come up with it is what it is? Because SOCKS.
Yeah. Well, and that's where the universal translator really is a necessary evil when it comes to a lot of sci-fi. Star Wars gets around it by having Galactic Common, which for our viewing experience ends up being English. But if it wasn't for the universal translator, a lot of Star Trek episodes would never get past the first communication. Because how the fuck are you going to establish communication and then resolve whatever the issue is if you can't actually figure out and talk a common language?
Well, you could just go the Stargate route. Oh, fuck it. Everyone speaks English anyway.
But even then, it was the same thing. Your first quarter of the episode in those early, especially early season 1, was Daniel trying to figure out which language this particular enclave of humans were speaking, and then figure out the minutia of their language beyond the base. You eat up a lot of screen time just by doing that every single visit. When in reality, that is what would really happen. It makes for boring TV.
I wouldn't say boring per se. You can just shift how you do it, but it gets really repetitive. And even if it's something where you have 500, 500 unique episodes, it's still going to get very, very, very repetitive after a little while. Even if every episode is enjoyable in and of itself, yeah, we're past that stage. We're past using the reflector dish to do this that we had no fucking idea it could do beforehand. We're past not using it this other fucking episode with the same kind of issue because, oh yeah, but we have another solution this time. It's something where you can just fast forward through it. But at times too, it feels like one of those things where they focus way more on finding a new way to solve the issue than just to make a new issue or create a new issue. Say, for example, you have something like in Stargate with the personality changer or person changer. With that one, if they were to run or come across another one like that, they wouldn't have the same issues again. They would have just said, "Ah, shit, not one of these again," and just solve it the first or the same way they did the first one, if they could. In Star Trek, you often have the same kinds of issues or the same types of issues, and they want to find different ways to solve it. At least in the TNG episodes, and in many cases in the Voyager episodes. In DS9, they just fucking start a war instead.
The ultimate solution.
Well, ultimate might also be the final one, but
Oh, wait a minute. Is that why the Federation uniforms changed to black and gray? Oh, wait a minute. All right, who picked the new uniforms? What is the problem?
Hans,
They
these are baddies.
they look right to me.
Well, I mean, Section 31 wears dark uniforms. They are kind of unknown. They make people just disappear.
Maybe we talk about them and their style choices next week.
I think that would be a good idea. I
Because
think it could be fun.
I think we have enough instances of their uniforms to go by now that
Oh, do
it
we
could
have
work.
to?
It could work. And it gives us a legitimate reason to dump all over Discovery again and again.
We can solve this issue with the power of maths. I wish that Red Letter Media had not done that. Because I swear to fuck, they predict the future way too many times on that channel.
Oh, Purple has it right. These are the voyages of the Starship Voyager. Our ongoing mission, we just want to go home.
Like any normal day at work.
You know, that would have been funny if it had been read aloud instead of by Chakotay or Janeway. By Tom Paris.
You know, of all the characters on that show, Paris was probably one of the most interesting. Because you get such a dynamic. You have him going from not wanting to be a part of the crew to accepting and becoming part of the crew to being a complete fucking immature asshat and getting kicked off the ship, only to find out that that was a ruse because he was helping track down freaking what's her face.
No, it wasn't trying to track down Seska. It was trying to track down who she was in contact with on the ship.
Well, you track down Seska, you find out who her contact was back on the ship. That it was that whole dual double agent type of setup thing. And yet you have him being reinstated, being promoted, being demoted, and being promoted again.
All before Harry.
And Harry is still a fucking ensign when they get home.
Hopefully, Starfleet at least, Starfleet itself promoted him to at least lieutenant at that point. Not JG, actual lieutenant.
We need to spend a week, though, speaking of Lon Suda.
Now that is a character that...
Yeah.
Oof.
It's a wasted character on Voyager.
Unfortunately.
It really was. They needed to put him on DS9. He would have fit and been better utilized by that staff.
You know what would have been better is if they had him on DS9 as the typical Federation, then have him join the Maquis, maybe as a double agent, maybe not, and then have it transpose into the Voyager episode into the Voyager episodes where he kind of shows up like Tuvok, or if he really was the how do I want to put it, the criminal that they've made him out to be in the show. That could have been a better storyline than what he got.
They could have gone a lot of ways with it had they found a different and better way to utilize him instead of him being a one-off. And granted, at the same time, look who they had playing him. You make a hell of a choice, a phenomenal fucking choice in your casting, and then you treat the character like that.
Yeah. Which... I can't actually think of anyone that would be as good in that role as Dorif. He has both the look and the mannerisms to actually pull that shit off.
He really is the true Twisted Mentat.
Yeah, even when you can't see it on his lips.
Yeah.
But he's a really good actor and a really good character. And they couldn't treat him right. And it's so fucking sad there because Lon Suda is, I would say, one of the top 5 characters on Voyager. And considering the main crew takes up more than that, that isn't really a good score for Voyager, but yeah.
How did I not know this about him?
Hmm?
He was I knew he was Wormtongue in Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers and Onward,
Yep.
but I didn't know he was in the 84 Dune series.
Yeah.
Or the Dune movie.
Yeah, Piter de Vries.
Yeah. Twisted Mentat. It's the hair.
I also haven't watched it in a while, so I do need to go watch it while it's on HBO Max.
Yeah, which earlier people were mentioning the Dune 2021 when we were talking about that. Now, here's the thing. I do agree, because of the visuals of it, if you have the opportunity to see it in a proper theater, I say it's worth doing. Despite all my disagreements with choices that they've made and decisions they made on what parts of the story to have in there or not have in there or to not explain, which is all of it, it really is something that does warrant the theater experience for the scale of the visuals at times. But I'm still left wondering, where are all the fucking people?
Once I lose a secundus, it seems.
I think I may have figured out why he is why he wasn't in Deep Space Nine. He was too busy playing a role on Babylon 5 for one episode. In
It was a
95.
long take.
You know what, Dora? I understand that. I hate people too. Pick an early or a late showing and you'll be fine.
Preferably on a weekday.
Maybe this is. Oh, it's the fucking other guy. Now, you don't want to go with fucking Primitive Life. He's a fucking poser. You want to go with Primitive Technology.
Wait, what?
Let's see. What was it? Wrote in their last name.
Yeah, I saw it. I'm pulling it up now.
Yeah, put a link in videos from other people and shit. But yeah, that guy is.
Oh,
Nah.
This
This
is who I
is
think
the guy
this
that you
is.
want.
hold on, let me see. No, this isn't the guy I was thinking of. There's a. My wife was watching a guy who lived
In a pineapple under the sea.
no, who was living in the living his own life, living off the land and stuff. But it was some white guy doing it. I can't
Some
think of his name.
white guy.
White.
White.
Wait? Wait. Wait. Wait.
Wait, we're going to Kuwait for oil? What?
Or we could be looking for the exasperated last breaths of Kuatu.
No, I think that's going to be discussed on Steve's live stream coming up later. In 10 minutes.
I don't even want to know what's going on with that at this point.
This thumbnail is yeah. Here's just the title of the stream for you, Jared. World in Crisis. Turning to God or Man? Question mark.
Do we need to ask Domingo about that?
You know, I like... So I just opened up the basic YouTube page, and I have to say, I'm enjoying some of the entries in the top row here. Hang on, let me go ahead and do this. Print screen. And nav. We'll get those tags too, why not? Alright, and save as. Yeah, we'll save it there. Doodly-doo. And book. Oh, that is an interesting cake there, Leon.
It looks good.
It looks different. All right, desktop and boom. That is the top row of the recommended that I see.
That is quite the hold on, I will share with everybody.
Yep.
I only see one thing here that doesn't really interest us much.
And would that be Steve's?
Maybe. Perhaps.
Futurama. 7 times Amy was at least 40% naked. Part 2.
So that means there's 7 more times. Or there's so many times in the first 3.5 takes that they had to make it into a part 2.
But is that by volume or by area, though?
I would say by area.
Was it something that we don't see this in many iterations of Star Trek? What's the fucking tech guy having to deal with shit that's just completely and utterly retarded?
Barkley?
And that's why we have an entire character just dedicated to that in DS9.
Kai Wynn?
Now she causes more issues.
Oh god, does she ever.
Yeah, the actress for that one is really good. It really makes me want to kick her in the teeth.
And you know what? Like I said the other night, the actress for Kai Wynn and the way that she portrayed that character can only be explained one of 2 ways. Either she is one hell of an actress, or she is one hell of a shitty person.
Yeah. Considering that she keeps getting jobs, though. Well, that doesn't actually tell anything. But, yeah. She portrays Kai Wynn in a way that really makes you want to fucking, well, beat her, pretty much. Such a despicable fucking character with everything.
Okay. I love that Mark Beiser looked into that channel and found that, oh, they have 2 of them for the times Leela was at least 40% naked too.
Well, if you're going to do one, you might as well do the other too. I mean,
at this point, I wouldn't be surprised if they even have it for Fry.
I'm waiting for him to pop up with that one next.
Yeah. But yeah, back to the whole Kai Wen and the actress thing. That is one thing that DS9 actually excelled at in comparison to its contemporaries. When you look at the casting beyond just the core crew that you are following, the fact that they recognized the talent and worthiness of Jeffrey Combs to start creating characters just to keep him on there. They made some damn good choices in the supporting casts. Like, Garrick wasn't supposed to be as integral of a character as he was. He was just supposed to be there a few times in the first couple seasons. But with the way that he was portrayed, okay, we need to have this character on here more. And so he became a more recurring character. Same thing with Rom. Rom was not a named character in the first episode, in the pilot. He wasn't even... It wasn't until later that it was confirmed that he was even Quark's brother.
Oh my god. Jeffrey Combs has made an appearance in a new Trek show.
Yes, he was on Lower Decks.
Yeah. He was fine at ending an Enterprise, honestly.
Wait a minute.
Ooh.
Oh god, they got one for Zoidberg? Oh no. Oh, they're projecting in, and yes, they definitely have one for the Professor, because oh boy was that old coot not afraid to just ditch everything.
Sadly. But just as something for, well, everyone to actually ponder on until next time too. What show has been the most in your face about just everything in regards to technology? Trying to just show everything to you and trying to just, with everything, explain it all. Try to over-explain it. I would actually really like to know.
That would be an interesting deeper dive into it too, because I'm sure there are some obscure sci-fi entries out there that do exactly that just info dump and berate you the entire time.
I can think of a few, not quite sci-fi, but comic book based series that try to do the same thing.
As long as it's somewhat related, and where they just over-explain fucking everything all the time, I'd say that goes. Because let's face it, we all know what a phone is here. We don't need it explained to us, especially not all the time. And even if you had a fish out of water character like someone from the 50s coming into today, we wouldn't have to explain all the fucking time what everything is. It might be somewhat alien to them to begin with, but it wouldn't be something that always needs to be there.
They would be able to catch up pretty quickly.
Yeah, if you took somebody from the 1950s and then somebody from the 1850s, the 1950s person would have a lot easier of a time integrating into society now than the 1850s character would. Solely for the simple fact they've dealt with television before, they've dealt with a telephone before, they understand radio, and you can explain most everything as Bluetooth technology. This allows me to talk via a radio wave to my phone. They wouldn't be able to completely understand it, but they would be able to grasp the basic concept there.
They've had enough of a baseline exposure to advanced tech that going to today wouldn't be as much of a shock technology-wise. They would have other shocks culturally, but not from the technology.
Yeah.
Actually, I would say going back 3,000 years, well, depending on the age of the person, but I'd say that, as you mentioned there, the culture shock would actually be worse than the technology shock.
Oh yeah. No matter what you do,
Yeah.
I mean, hell, you could take one of us and put us, 3,000 years into the future. Technology will be vastly different, but culturally, what's changed, and that's what's going to shock us the most.
I think Sean Carroll wants to talk about I don't know if he wants to go Farscape, the Yuzong Vong, or the Tyranids.
What about Lex?
Or Lex. Yeah, Lex is another good one, too.
By the way, if I show up 3,000 years in the future and they're praising Steve Shives as a great YouTuber, I'm going to just kill myself right then and there.
Yeah.
I'd be surprised if they even knew what the fuck YouTube was.
That far in the future, yeah, that they might refer to it as just the mythical recordings.
Or you want to go outside and you actually want something like, say, food, and they offer you a blowjob at Starbucks. If that happens, you know that you're in the most realistic future of them all.
I could go for a... no, just no. That was not supposed to be a documentary, people. Stop making it into one, please.
Oh, but that documentary doesn't... Yeah, no, I'm not going to play it.
If you are really interested in watching a documentary that's in the guise of a popular media movie that's just pure entertainment, go watch a real documentary like This Is Spinal Tap or Down Periscope.
Or check out the submarine operations picture I shared in VTW this week.
Oh boy.
Did you see that, Jared?
I think I saw it. Pretty sure I saw
The
it.
list?
The list, the rules of submarine operations.
Oh, yes. Like I said, I'm partial to number 25.
Pretty much.
There's just something about it that it speaks to me. It speaks to me on a very, very kind level.
Number 25 and number 29 go together quite well.
Oh, yeah, yes. Number 29 especially, never become a lessons learned. But maybe
Has anyone told that to Tasty yet?
Oh, I hope so. You know what? That motherfucker has actually been enjoying his time as an FSA.
What?
He's actually enjoying working on the mess decks.
He must be on the mid rats section.
Yeah.
The night shift, whatever you want to call it.
Or it could be the fact that he has, so far to date, a shit supervisor in his actual work center and a decent one on the mess decks.
Nah.
That would never happen.
That's the Navy. It never happens like that.
But any parting words before I click buttons and make things happen?
Just compare the
I
sizes, not
wanna know.
necessarily the height, but the volume.
Yeah. I really want to know the most in-your-face, we need to explain shit sci-fi experiences that you've had. Just for the sake of it.
That could be an interesting one. Leave your comment below, and we'll see what responses we get and go over them next week. And as a precursor to the next show in about 40 minutes or so, I'll leave you with number 25. Just remember, what doesn't kill you only makes you regret living longer.
I have a bad feeling about this.